In this video, we're going to look at some domain and range examples for some basic functions. So we're going to look at quadratic, absolute value, and square root graphs, which are some of the more basic functions you're going to see in algebra early on as you look at functions, transformations. So we're just going to look at domain and range for those examples. Remember that domain is the first component in our ordered pairs, so our x values. Range is the second component, or the y values. So we're going to look along our x and y axis to determine domain and range. And remember that there's a few different ways we can write domain and range. Early on, we typically look at less than and greater than signs. So it might look something like this. But we're going to use interval notation here. So we use brackets when the minimum or maximum is included in the graph, parentheses when it is not. So in this case, this domain example, it includes everything greater than -7 up to and including 0. But because there's parentheses here, -7 for our x values does not give us a value or a point on our graph. And then the range goes from -3 up to infinity, and it includes -3. The reason we don't do bracket with infinity is that it's not a specific value, so we have to use parentheses. We're only going to use continuous functions in these examples, but if we had only specific points on a graph, that domain and range would look like this. So our first example here, we've got absolute value function. Our domain along our x-axis, sometimes it's nice to kind of go along our x-axis with a vertical line here. Our graph goes from one end of the image to the other. So that's typically what your calculator is going to show. It's not going to give an arrow at the end of the screen. It's just going to continue on. So we know this goes forever to the left and to the right. So our domain is going to be from -infinity to infinity. We have to use parentheses, or we can say all real numbers. The range then, our y values, well, it goes all the way down to a y value of 1, but our graph stops there and doesn't go any lower. But then as we increase, it goes up forever. So for our range, we say that we go from 1 to infinity, and we have to use bracket for the 1 because that's included in our graph. Next example, another absolute value function. Again, our x values go forever in both directions. The graph doesn't stop. So we have all real numbers. And our range, well, now we have a maximum at -2. Oh no. Let's fix this here. So we have a maximum up here at -2, but then it goes down forever. So remember, domain and range, we always want to write the minimum first and then maximum. So it goes all the way down to -infinity, and then it comes up to and includes -2. So there's our range. Remember to try these problems before we go over them yourself. So this example here, now we've got a quadratic function. Again, we see our x values are all real numbers. Goes forever. And similar to absolute value, we're either going to have a minimum or maximum value at a specific value for y, and it's going to go up to infinity or down to -infinity. In this case, it starts at -5 and goes up to infinity. Another quadratic example, you guessed it, for domain, it's all real numbers. And for our range, it goes up to 3 and down forever to -infinity. So we have to put it from least to greatest, -infinity. Oh, this needs to be flipped around. So this should be, let's see if we can fix this. -infinity to 3. and it includes 3, so we need a bracket. Okay. Last two examples, we've got square root functions. So our domain here starts at 4, right? So this is our minimum value. It doesn't go any further to the left, and to the right it goes forever. So we go from 4 to infinity. And then our range, we start at a y value of 1, right? So it starts here and goes up forever. Even though it looks like it's going to flatten out, it does slowly go up towards infinity. So we have a range of 1 to infinity. Last example, if we have a square root function that goes down, our domain, to the left it stops at -3, to the right it goes forever, so -3 to infinity, and our range, well, it's right on the x-axis here, so that's a y on our y-axis, it's a y value of 0, and that's our maximum, and then it goes down to -infinity, so -infinity to 0.